We've been taught that love is proven in grand gestures, in sacrifice, in staying. But no one really talks about the quieter test, the one that happens after you say the you were afraid to say, after the confession, after the room is unlocked, after the door swings open and the air changes. That's when the real work begins, because vulnerability isn't a single act. It's a sustained state. It's waking up the next morning and realizing you can't go back to being partially known. It's sitting across from someone who now carries your truth in their hands and choosing not to shrink. That's the part that terrifies people. We think the hardest moment is speaking. It isn't. The hardest moment is remaining visible, remaining open when your instinct is to retreat, remaining present when your nervous system is screaming, protect yourself. Because here's what happens biologically when we confess something deeply personal, our bodies interpret it as risk, exposure, potential threat. Your heart races, your mind scans for rejection, your stomach tightens. That's not weakness. That's wiring. For thousands of years, belonging meant survival. Rejection meant danger. So when you open the door to the hidden room inside you, your body braces as if you've stepped onto a cliff. And that's why so many people retreat after they finally open up. They share, then they pull away. They confess, then they distance. They reveal, then they joke. They expose, then they minimize. Because being seen feels unsafe before it feels freeing. But here's the truth most people never stay long enough to discover. If you don't retreat, something extraordinary happens. Connection deepens. Not immediately, not theatrically, not with violins playing in the background. But slowly, quietly, steadily, there's a shift. When someone holds your truth and doesn't weaponize it, when they don't flinch, when they don't withdraw, when they don't rush to fix you, when they simply say, I'm here, something rewires. Your nervous system recalibrates. You begin to understand that love doesn't require performance. And that realization changes everything. Let's talk about the fear underneath your confession. It wasn't really about past mistakes. It wasn't really about doubt. It wasn't even about whether you're enough. It was about this. If you see the full version of me, will you still choose me? That question is ancient. It lives inside children who hide report cards, inside adults who hide debt, inside partners who hide insecurity, inside anyone who learned early that love felt conditional. We don't fear being known. We fear being known and then left. So we edit ourselves. We curate. We present the strong parts, the stable parts, the healed parts, the confident parts, and we tuck the rest into that locked room. But here's the cost of that strategy. If someone loves you while you're hiding, you'll never know if they love you or the mask. And that uncertainty is lonelier than rejection, because at least rejection is clean. Mask-based love is confusing. You sit next to someone who says they adore you, but you wonder, would you adore me if you knew? That question erodes intimacy slowly, like water against stone. You mentioned something profound earlier. Intimacy without transparency is performance. Let's go deeper into that. Performance-based love sounds like, I'll be the easy one. I won't be too emotional. I won't need too much. I won't ask for reassurance. I'll keep my doubts quiet. I'll fix myself before I bring it to you. It feels mature. It feels responsible. It even feels selfless. But underneath it is fear, because performance says, if I manage myself well enough, I won't get abandoned. But intimacy says, if I show myself honestly, we'll build something real. Performance builds admiration. Intimacy builds attachment. Performance is impressive. Intimacy is connective. performance is controlled, intimacy is alive. And you're at the point where performance isn't enough anymore. You don't want to be impressive. You want to be known. Let's talk about the psychology of what you're doing. When one partner initiates deep vulnerability, it creates what researchers call an upward intimacy spiral. Openness invites openness. Emotional disclosure activates reciprocity. The brain responds to authenticity with increased bonding chemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. That's not poetic language. That's neurological reality. When you say, "Here's where I'm afraid," you give the other person permission to say, "Me too." And that's when something sacred happens. Not romance, not fantasy. Resonance. Two nervous systems realizing they don't have to brace. Two people realizing they don't have to audition. Two humans standing without armor and discovering they're still wanted. That's rare, because most couples live at what we could call level 2 intimacy. Level 1 shared logistics, schedules, meals, responsibilities. Level 2 shared enjoyment, humor, attraction, interests. Level 3 shared vulnerability, fear, doubt, history. Level 4 shared emotional safety. I can fall apart here and not be punished. Very few people reach level 4. Not because they don't want to, but because getting there requires someone to go first. And going first feels like stepping into open air. You said something powerful. I've been afraid of losing you. Let's sit with that. Fear of loss doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care. But when fear drives behavior, it creates distance. Because instead of moving toward connection, you move toward control. You try to secure the relationship by being flawless. But love doesn't deepen through flawlessness. It deepens through shared humanity. Here's the paradox. The more you try to prevent loss by hiding imperfections, the more emotionally distant you become. And distance creates the very instability you were trying to avoid, whereas vulnerability increases stability. Not because it guarantees someone will stay, but because it guarantees authenticity. And authenticity builds resilient attachment. Let's address the part of you that still feels exposed. After confession, there's a window of sensitivity. You might overanalyze their tone, overread their silence, overinterpret their mood. That's normal. Your system is scanning for evidence of safety. This is where maturity shows up, not in suppressing that sensitivity, but in staying present through it. Instead of withdrawing, you communicate. Instead of assuming, you ask. Instead of shrinking, you remain. And remaining is courageous. Now let's talk about something deeper. You said you used to believe independence was strength, that needing no one was power. That belief usually forms when dependency felt unsafe at some point in life. Maybe you learned early that relying on others led to disappointment. Maybe vulnerability was met with criticism. Maybe you were praised for being low maintenance. So you adapted. You became self-sufficient, self-contained, self-protective. And that strategy probably worked. It helped you survive. But survival and intimacy require different skills. Don't need. Intimacy says, connect. Survival says, stay prepared. Intimacy says, stay present. Survival says, minimize risk. Intimacy says, accept uncertainty. You're not weak for struggling with that shift. You're evolving. Let's imagine two futures. Future 1, you go back to partial openness. You re-lock certain rooms. You soften your confession. You reassure them that you're fine. You manage your emotions privately again. The relationship continues, comfortably, functionally, predictably. But there's always a quiet ache, a subtle loneliness, because you're loved, but not fully known. Future 2, you stay open. You let conversations deepen. You tolerate discomfort. You allow reassurance. You express doubt when it arises. You receive comfort without deflecting it. The relationship becomes less polished, but more real. There are harder conversations, but fewer silent fears. There's less performance, more presence. Which one feels alive? Here's something essential. Confession isn't a one-time event. It's a pattern of honesty. You don't just open the door once. You keep it unlocked. You normalize emotional truth. You say things like, I'm feeling insecure today. I'm scared of messing this up. I don't want to push you away. I need reassurance. I'm still learning how to trust this. That language builds secure attachment. And secure attachment is not about never feeling fear. It's about expressing fear without shame. Let's talk about the other person for a moment. If they respond with care, patience, and steadiness, that's a gift. If they struggle, that doesn't automatically mean rejection. Sometimes your vulnerability activates their own. Sometimes your openness forces them to confront emotions they've avoided, and that can look like hesitation. Give space for growth, but never abandon yourself to maintain connection. That's the key. Vulnerability does not mean self-erasure. It means authentic presence. You said something beautiful. I'd rather risk losing you while being honest than keep you while being hidden. That sentence marks emotional maturity, because you've shifted from outcome control to value alignment. You're choosing integrity over guarantee. That's strength, not loud strength, not performative strength, quiet strength, the kind that builds lifelong intimacy. Now let's address the lingering fear. What if they see everything and decide it's too much? Then you will grieve honestly. But you won't question whether you were loved for a mask. You won't spend years wondering. You won't slowly disappear inside your own relationship. And here's something important. The right connection does not require you to be less complex. It requires mutual courage. Two people willing to say, I'm imperfect, and I'm staying. There's something else happening here. You're not just confessing to them. You're confessing to yourself. You're admitting, I'm still healing. I still doubt. I still fear. I still want reassurance. That self-acceptance is foundational, because the more you reject your own fragility, the more you'll assume others will too. But when you integrate your imperfections, you no longer present them as liabilities. You present them as humanity, and humanity invites closeness. Let's zoom out. Most relationships don't fail because of incompatibility. They fail because of avoidance. Avoidance of conflict, avoidance of vulnerability, avoidance of emotional truth. You are choosing confrontation instead. Not confrontation in anger, but confrontation in honesty. That's rare. And it changes relational trajectories. You said something earlier. We connect, and in that connection we heal. That's deeply accurate. Attachment theory shows us that secure bonds literally reshape emotional regulation patterns. When someone consistently responds to your vulnerability with safety, your nervous system learns trust. That's how healing happens. Not alone in a room, not through self-sufficiency, through co-regulation, through shared presence, through being held emotionally and allowing it. There's a final layer here, the difference between wanting intimacy and being ready for it. Wanting intimacy feels romantic. Being ready for intimacy feels uncomfortable because it requires honesty over image, connection over control, transparency over strategy, courage over perfection. You are stepping into readiness, and readiness feels raw before it feels rewarding. Let me leave you with this. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are a human being learning that love is not secured through excellence, but through openness. And that realization, painful, vulnerable, exposing, is the beginning of real intimacy, not cinematic intimacy, not dramatic intimacy, sustainable intimacy, the kind built on unlocked rooms, the kind built on staying, the kind built on saying, "This is me," and hearing, "I'm here." And if that happens not perfectly, not flawlessly, but consistently, then what you're building won't be fragile. It will be real. And real is stronger than perfect ever was. There's a version of me you've known for a long time. The capable one, the steady one, the one who laughs easily and carries conversations without hesitation. The one who seems grounded, thoughtful, emotionally aware. And then there's the quieter version. The one who lies awake at night replaying conversations. The one who second guesses affection. The one who wonders if being loved fully means eventually being left fully. I've introduced you to parts of myself in careful layers, not because I wanted to deceive you, not because I enjoy hiding, but because somewhere along the way, I learned that love feels safest when you ration it, when you reveal yourself slowly, strategically, safely. But safety has a cost, and I'm starting to realize I've been paying it in intimacy. There's a room inside me I've kept locked, not boarded up, not abandoned, just locked, clean, organized, contained. The kind of room you tell yourself you'll open when the time is right. I kept saying the time wasn't right, but the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that if I opened that door, you'd look inside and see not just history, not just scars, but uncertainty, doubt, the parts of me that still feel unfinished. And we don't talk enough about how hard it is to let someone see you unfinished. We celebrate growth. We celebrate healing. We celebrate strength. But very rarely do we celebrate the trembling middle, the becoming, the not there yet, the still figuring it out. And that's where I live more often than I admit. There's this myth we're taught about relationships, that once you find the right person, your insecurities quiet down, your fears dissolve, your past loses its weight. But that's not how it works. The right person doesn't erase your fear, they illuminate it. Because when something matters, your fear gets louder. When someone becomes important, your defenses get activated. When love feels real, the risk feels real too. And I think that's what's been happening to me. The closer we get, the more I feel two opposing forces inside me. One wants to lean in, the other wants to protect. One says, "This is safe." The other whispers, "Be careful." One wants to be known, the other wants to stay impressive. And I've been standing in the middle of that tug of war for longer than I'd like to admit. You once asked me why I sometimes go quiet when conversations turn vulnerable. Why I deflect with humor. Why I say, "I'm fine," when I'm clearly somewhere else. I didn't know how to answer then. But I do now, because vulnerability feels like stepping into open space without knowing if someone will catch you. And I've spent years perfecting the art of catching myself. Independence became my armor. Self-sufficiency became my pride. I told myself needing less meant hurting less. But here's what I've discovered. Needing less doesn't protect you from pain. It protects you from depth. And I don't want to protect myself from depth anymore. There's something deeply lonely about being loved for the version of yourself that's edited, about being admired for your strength while your softness stays hidden, about being appreciated for your stability while your doubt stays silent, because admiration feels good, but being known feels safe. And there's a difference. You can admire someone from a distance, but you can only truly know someone when they let you see where they're fragile. That's the room I've been keeping locked. Not a scandal, not a betrayal. Just my fragility. My fear of not being enough. My fear of eventually being too much. My fear that if you saw the full, unpolished version of me, the overthinking, the insecurity, the parts that still heal slowly, you might see me differently. And that fear has shaped more of my behavior than I realized. Every time I softened a confession, every time I swallowed a doubt, every time I told myself, don't make this heavy, I thought I was protecting us. But I was protecting an image of the composed partner, the emotionally intelligent one, the steady presence. And I am those things. But I'm also the one who sometimes needs reassurance, the one who sometimes feels small, the one who sometimes wonders if love lasts or if it slowly erodes under the weight of ordinary human imperfection. We don't talk enough about how terrifying it is to let someone see your uncertainty, because uncertainty feels like weakness. But it's not. It's honesty. And honesty is the foundation of real intimacy, not curated vulnerability, not rehearsed confessions. Not the kind you share when you already know the outcome, but the kind that makes your voice shake. The kind where you don't know how it will land. The kind where you risk being misunderstood. There's a moment in every deepening relationship where you reach a threshold. You've shared enough to feel close, but not enough to feel fully seen. And most people live at that threshold forever. Because crossing it requires courage. It requires saying, here is where I'm afraid. It requires admitting, I don't always have this together. It requires trusting that love can hold imperfection. I've been standing at that threshold with you, and I'm tired of standing there, because intimacy without transparency starts to feel like performance. And I don't want to perform for you. I want to be present. Fully. Messy if necessary. Real if uncomfortable. There's something powerful that happens when you stop editing yourself. When you stop calculating how much vulnerability is acceptable. When you stop rationing truth like it's a scarce resource. You breathe differently. You sit differently. You love differently. Because you're no longer carrying the weight of being partially hidden. I've realized something recently. The fear of being known often outweighs the fear of being alone, and that's tragic. Because being known is what we crave most. To be seen not just in our strengths, but in our contradictions. To be understood not just in our confidence, but in our confusion. To be chosen not just when we're impressive, but when we're uncertain. That's what I want. Not reassurance that I'm perfect. Not validation that I never struggle, but acceptance that I am human and still worthy. There's research that shows when one partner shares authentic vulnerability, it increases emotional closeness significantly. Not because it solves problems, but because it builds trust. Trust isn't built on perfection. It's built on transparency. It's built on consistency. It's built on showing up without armor and staying. You know what's ironic? The very parts of ourselves we hide out of fear of rejection are often the parts that make us relatable. Our doubt, our hesitation, our fear of loss, our desire to be enough. We think those parts are liabilities, but they're bridges, they're invitations, they're openings. And I've been holding mine back, not because I don't trust you, but because I've been learning how to trust love itself. There's a difference. Trusting a person is one thing. Trusting the process of being fully seen is another. It requires surrender, and surrender feels like loss of control. But control is not connection. Control is containment. Connection is exposure. Connection is saying, this is me on a day I don't feel strong. Connection is admitting, I sometimes fear you'll realize I'm still figuring this out. Connection is asking for reassurance without shame. That's what I'm learning. That real strength isn't emotional independence. It's emotional honesty. It's the ability to say, I need you sometimes, without feeling diminished, because needing someone isn't weakness. It's biology. It's attachment. It's humanity. For years, I thought the strongest version of myself was the one who could survive alone, the one who could walk away first, the one who didn't depend. But survival and intimacy are different skill sets. Survival says, prepare for loss. Intimacy says, risk connection. Survival says, minimize need. Intimacy says, express need. And I've been transitioning from one to the other, slowly, imperfectly, but intentionally. I don't want a love that exists on the surface. I don't want comfort without depth. I don't want admiration without understanding. I want to be seen, not just liked, not just desired, seen. And seeing requires light in the hidden rooms. So here it is. I don't always feel secure. I don't always feel certain. I sometimes wonder if I'm giving enough, if I'm present enough, if I'm steady enough. And sometimes I fear that if you saw how often those thoughts surface, you might question me. But hiding them hasn't made them disappear. It's just made me lonelier. And loneliness inside a relationship is heavier than loneliness alone. Because at least alone, you expect to carry your own weight. But in partnership, silence becomes a wall. And I don't want walls between us. I want windows. Even if they let in cold air sometimes. I want honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. Because the alternative is distance. And distance feels safe until it becomes permanent. So I'm choosing closeness. Even if it scares me. Even if it exposes me. Even if it means you see the cracks. Because cracks don't mean broken. They mean human. And if love can't hold humanity, it can't hold anything real. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if this deepens us immediately or slowly. I don't know if it changes how you see me. But I know this. I would rather be fully known and risk losing you than partially known and slowly lose myself. Because the cost of hiding has become too high. The cost of pretending has become too exhausting. The cost of being impressive instead of authentic has become too heavy. So here I am, not polished, not perfected, not finished, but honest. And maybe that's the real beginning. Not the butterflies, not the grand declarations, but this quiet courage, this willingness to unlock the door, this decision to love without armor. Because love without armor is terrifying. But love behind walls is lonely, and I choose terrifying over lonely every time.